You're listening to Ramble with Intent. I'm your host, Lisa Szabon-Smith, visual strategist, advocate, ambition guide, and public speaker. Let's ramble.
And there's there is a lot going on right now.
Yes.
Across all dimensions is what I'm going to say.
And there's a lot of confusion.
There's a lot of confusion, which is revealing the truth.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, I think I'm really excited for this conversation, and I feel it's going to open new portals for the people who also listen to this, because what I'm feeling and seeing, obviously seeing the field, the quantum field, seeing and hearing what's coming through higher dimensional consciousness to support humanity in its awakening right now.
Yeah, awesome. And I think that's, to one degree or another, that's what we're all here for, but we're just floundering to figure out to which measure or how do we support those around us who are going through all of this too, and us too, because we're experiencing it at the same time.
Right, yeah. Exactly. And everyone's at different stages on the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Yeah. All right, well, let's dive in. So Kristen Stuart, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here.
I'm so happy you're here. We have, so low premise, you and I ended up sharing a table in a VIP session at a business conference back in September. And I sat there and I felt like you could just see straight into me. And normally I go into complete guarded protection, try and put up a wall type situation. And at that point I was like, okay, you know what? Tell me what you see. And so it was really interesting for me to experience that moment, because I think I also entered that business conference being able to just be like, I am here, I will take in whatever can be delivered, and I will learn and gain from whatever I can take. So that probably helped without having the walls up. But do you experience that often, where you sense that people have walls around them when they come up to you or come across you?
Yeah, I mean, what happens is there can be the wall. I feel the wall come up as people also come into this place of, the self-protection, especially when they find out the work that I do. Because literally, as a seer, some might use the word psychic, channel, I work in the unseen realms, bringing the unseen to the seen, the unknown to the known, through the work that I do with, the Akashic Records, which is this energetic that carries the history of your soul from the beginning of time through past, present, future. And so there's that piece of it. Yet the truth is, as well, what we are remembering right now, we're in the most pivotal, just to set the context, we're in the most pivotal time of shifting consciousness humanity has ever known. So there's a lot happening, there's a lot moving. And when I'll use the word the field a lot as we're talking, most likely. And just to understand, the field is the quantum field. We exist in this field that we don't see, yet we feel. But we also have to be so discerning as to what we are feeling and if this is the truth.
Yes.
And so what I was going to share is that what we are remembering and waking up to, among many things, is that ultimately we're remembering we are energetic beings, and we communicate through energy, through light, and through frequency, vibration.
Yeah.
So for myself, obviously, there was a time when I lived very guarded, very protected, which was part of my story of sexual trauma a few times in my life, which of course has me go into protect mode. I'm not safe. I'm not safe with the masculine. There's these pieces of it. And so I lived a lot of my life very guarded and very protected. But what that was also doing was preventing me from feeling the ecstasy of life that is here for us to feel and to know, the joy, the love. And so as this probably is what subconsciously drew me into the path that I chose to walk, where I first stepped on a yoga mat in 2002 to open my heart, ultimately. Because the heart is where we are communicating through. And so when you and I met, what I saw was this I could feel the connection to the warrior I call her the warrioress frequency. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's that part of me. Not a lot of people know my story before sort of moving more into spiritual mentorship and whatnot, but that warrior woman frequency who's known that she's had to stand guard and protect, which is also part of what we are unwinding in the collective feminine consciousness for the feminine to feel safe to be all of her again.
Mm-hmm.
And so many women, especially living under a patriarchal consciousness and programming, have disguised themselves as the masculine, is
Yeah.
often how I refer to it, to stay safe and to stay, it's like strong, safe, protected.
Yeah.
Yet it's the disconnect to that divine feminine within. And I could use the word feminine or divine feminine, and it honors me the most to use the language that carries the frequency of my work.
Mm-hmm.
And so, where we are right now on the planet ultimately is coming home to this union within, the union and safety and sanctity with our divine masculine within
Yeah.
and with our divine feminine within. And
Yeah.
so, this reclamation of the feminine on the planet that we're witnessing, and like the restoration of union
Mm-hmm.
as a collective humanity,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
is ultimately what we're all going through, and it brings it back to the heart. And so there is this willingness in you. There is enough of a willingness and a trust in you that you felt something that gave you a moment of reflection to go, can I trust this? I'm going to open.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And and then we can start communicating,
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
because we're communicating through energy, we're communicating through the heart. But I mean, there's been so many times in my life where it's like I've been guarded and then I'll be met with guarding,
Oh,
because
yeah.
we're doing this back and forth. And it's all of it, though, is inviting us to remember that it is in our oneness that we rise, and we're remembering as a collective humanity. While our eyes see a lot of chaos, a lot of disruption, dismantling, and separation,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
our truth is we know union is who we are. We are one. We come from oneness. We live as oneness. We'll return to oneness.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's,
that's one with source, one with the universe, one with God,
mhm.
whatever language resonates here. But we are this.
Yeah. Beautiful. And so let's go and rewind backwards a little bit. So what path did you step into back in the early 2000s that you are now devoted to and to helping a lot of women across Canada, but also in our strong province of Alberta?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've always been I'd say a spiritually curious and a spiritual explorer from the time I was a little girl. I grew up in Northern Alberta, so I'm born and bred in Alberta. Northern Alberta. I was born in Edmonton, lived briefly outside of Edmonton in Redwater, and then moved to Cold Lake
Oof.
for my father was transferred up to Cold Lake for his work.
Yeah.
And my school was 50% Indigenous, and that was incredible. So from the time I was a little girl, I was not 8 years old when we moved, I was exposed to ceremony. And I remember learning to make bannock in school and then experiencing my first sweetgrass ceremony. And that touched me deeply.
That's
And
powerful.
I was in Catholic school, because the Catholic school my parents felt like would be a better education for us at that time, small classes, all the things. And that really, left an imprint on me. And I knew that something was awakening in me even more. And I was always very connected to nature, very connected to the outdoors. I was very tomboyish. I was very much a tomboy. So I did have my own dirt bike, my own sled,
Yeah.
snowmobile. This is what we did, mountain biking, anything that had me outdoors, adventuring and pushing my limits in some way,
Hmm.
and was what I was excited about.
Yeah.
And then there was this piece, from my early education that then deepened when I went into university in Calgary, and I studied Eastern religions,
Mm.
Shinto, Buddhism, Hinduism, among sustainable development for tourism. That's actually what my degree was for.
Oh, wow. That's quite the blend.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, like, I love learning everything.
Yeah.
It's my, my human design, for those that resonate with that, is a manifesting generator. So I'm into all the things,
Yeah.
very passionate about everything, really. And so when as I link it up, as I then, started pursuing studies and travel globally. Like, I just wanted to travel the world, and I would travel to developing countries and immerse in the cultures and be in ceremony. And, I was in Bali in 1995, and there was no Eat, Pray, Love yet. And there was nobody really in Bali yet in
Yeah.
1995. And then to Central American, South American countries, and just ceremony and ritual. And then in 2002, I was met with the yoga practice. Yoga called me.
Yeah.
So I stepped on a yoga mat in 2002 here in Canmore, where I live, or I live just outside of Canmore now, but in the Yoga Lounge studio. And it was like, oh my gosh, I remember this feeling when I was a little girl, like, this is drawing me deeper. It was like a
Mhm.
magnet going, okay, let's go deeper here. And I knew immediately within 2 classes, I was working I was about to begin my certification as a personal trainer.
Mm.
And I knew that yoga, there was something there for me to pursue. So within 2 classes, I knew I would become a yoga teacher as well.
Yeah.
And it propelled me. I like to say the yoga practice, the physical practice, is like the appetizer. It draws you in. It's a little uncomfortable, especially if you're, not used to working on flexibility and things like that.
Mhm.
But it is the only practice that strengthens and lengthens you at the same time. And I loved that.
Yeah.
And the feeling in my body of moments of peace, pockets of peace that
Mm.
my mind was not used to feeling, a calmness, a peacefulness, a
Yeah.
connection to my breath.
Yeah. Well, especially with like the history of dirt biking and mountain biking, the brain is
Yeah,
always on. It has to always be thinking about what's next, what's happening. There's maybe
right.
a split second of silence, but that's about it.
Right. Plus also 2002 was when I met who is now my husband, and he was on the path to become a mountain guide, an
Mhm.
IFMGA ACMG mountain guide. And so, this is all happening simultaneously, and that mountain life was also my life. So, I was an ice climber, an alpinist, rock climber. This is what we did, backcountry ski touring, all adrenaline activities in the mountains
Yeah.
that were built on top of what was a cracked soul foundation for me because of the sexual assault, the rape that I had experienced just prior to meeting my
Oh,
husband, Mike,
wow.
actually,
Oh,
by
wow.
my employer. So there is, and I feel it's important to bring this in because we can look at the one side of the story
Mm.
of, running around in the mountains and adrenaline and this building strength and pushing through fear. And, there's a real sexiness to that side of it.
Mhm.
The other side of it was I was determined to get strong so no man would ever do that to me again.
Mhm.
And I was also running from my trauma.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's so easy to try and shove it away and ignore it and cast it aside. And if the stronger we get, the easier it's going to be to just, you know, I don't know, muscle it off, if you will.
Absolutely. So it's like muscle up, harden up.
Yeah.
You're going to be afraid. I've got this. I can do this. That was also already in my personality,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There's that fire in me. And so it was a very interesting journey. And, there's those pivotal moments in life where things happen, trauma being one of them. Prior to that, there'd been some, sexual assault in a less intense way is what I'll say. When
Hmm.
I was traveling through Central America, as I traveled solo for a long time. I just pick a
Yeah.
place, go to it, travel solo.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, had some negative experiences, robbery and things like that. So it's just like wove this pattern that then my next steps, I was like, I'm gonna get strong. I'm gonna be the warrioress type vibes in a culture that really celebrated that too.
Totally. Yeah, especially during that time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because this is 2000, early 2000.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
During all the like fitspiration and strongs the new
yes,
skinny and all of
yes,
that language. Yeah.
right, exactly. And then ultimately my next big like moment, the one that's pretty defining on my path of awakening was in 2012. And so I had been in Peru in November of 2011, which is considered to be the second, like that time in our history was considered to be the second big wave of awakening for
Okay.
humanity was in 2011.
Okay.
And there was a cosmic reset at that time,
Oh yeah.
consciousness wise.
Yeah.
So I actually wound up in what would probably often referred to as a Kundalini awakening by the
Mhm.
energetics. I was in Peru for specifically for the dates 11, 11, 11.
Oh boy. Yeah.
And the bliss, the euphoria, the frequency there is of another dimension, absolutely, in the Sacred Valley. I was in an awakening. I was there on retreat with my mentor at the time, and I knew I was coming home to open my yoga studio, Sacred Roots, in Canmore, January 2012. So I basically come home, and I shared a piece of the story recently. I remember flying into Calgary International Airport and the plane landing on the runway and feeling a thud
Mhm.
energetically and internally. I remember saying to myself, wow, we've got a lot of work to do here because the frequency is so heavy. Our consciousness here is so heavy
Yeah.
compared to how high the land of Peru vibrates, for example.
Mm.
Like the sacred sites around the world, they're of very
Different,
different
different
frequencies.
thing. Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, not to lower the energy of our conversation, but I was in Dachau in Germany. I don't remember the years, but pre-2010. And you think, you're just going to pay respect and learn some more and kind of witness, a piece of our history that is not a good piece, but even 30 minutes away from pulling into that site, the vehicle is silent, it's a heaviness, and you just go into this deep reverie. No one talked. We're with our teammates. Like, it is powerful that even those types of sites, the amount of um, demanded respect that happened and happens on those sites. So I can only imagine the more elevated spiritual
Right,
sites as well.
right, right. And I mean, it's all bringing us into reflection, bringing us into deeper into ourselves, right? I
Mhm.
mean, that is the
Yeah,
path.
yeah.
And essentially, I came back from Peru, ready to rock and roll, launched Sacred Roots Yoga Studio January. And by July 31st, my birthday, I was on the floor in full adrenal burnout. And then, so I'd been going through, I stopped sleeping in May. And it's
Okay.
interesting, like
Okay. Yeah.
right
Yeah.
now, 12 years later, I still have little hits of remembrance of, yeah, right now I'd stopped sleeping for more than 2 or 3 hours a night, which we know what happens when we don't sleep. I was in such an accelerated state. It was just like anxiety to the max, stress, with the business and energetically what was happening on the planet at that time was super high frequency coming in,
Yeah.
which is exactly what's happening right now.
Yeah. And it's crazy right now. I don't know about everyone else, but I'm feeling shifts. I can't explain them. I can't put,
Yeah.
a noticing to it. My most strongest experience was we were on the beach in Cabo San Lucas in Mexico when the solar eclipse happened.
Yes.
And right at its height, it was like I was being physically crushed, among other
Yes.
sensations that I felt too. And it was crazy, to say
Yeah.
the least.
So we can talk about that because
Yeah,
it's like what's happening. I'll finish the story piece
sure.
just
Yes,
to
please.
bring this around for everyone because I know you and I we could talk for hours on
We
end
could.
about
Yeah.
many things because these are all tangents that come off of
Yeah.
essentially what's happening right now in the world. And so for me, my big experience that propelled me on the path that I've been walking for the last 12 years was ultimately I wound up in suicidal psychosis. I tried to exit the planet and, divine intervention. Um, Ultimately, all of it was awakening me to my truth, the way that I'd been operating. I could no longer operate at such a high speed, high adrenaline. I basically had created an incredible addiction to
Mm.
adrenaline. That was my
Yeah.
drug of choice, and just like going and moving and pushing harder and faster. And even while I was literally on the floor crying without any energy and knew I had to pick myself up off the floor to go open the studio door and welcome in the like few students at the time, which was creating the business stress because we're approaching the summer. Studio is slowing down and it's just brand new. But in my head, it's like, what's wrong with you? You're stronger than this.
Yeah.
You've spent like 18 hours climbing a mountain. So get up off the floor and sort it out. And
Hmm.
this is your business and it's your baby and you better figure it out. Like that was the voice in my head.
Mm.
The harsh voice,
Yeah.
the
But
voice of you can do better, be better. And the crash, I wound up checking myself into the hospital to sleep and to get away from this, like the noise of the studio, and my family obviously extremely concerned with what's going on, all the things. And I had been keeping everything inside. People didn't know I was crashing down because I thought I had to be stronger and not talk about it and just figure it out because it's my problem, it's my business.
yeah, it's
And
like you're
so,
telling my story, but from a different lens.
yeah,
Yeah.
that ultimately I learned the power of vulnerability.
Yeah.
And it was a deep journey inwards to start to reprogram myself from the inside out. But it had to go to the edge
Hmm.
because that's what it needed to be for me.
Yeah.
And, it took me, so I wound up in the hospital. I was on suicide watch and I thought I was just there to sleep, really, and I was like, I'm going to go in there. I'm going to figure out a plan to save the studio, and this is all going to get cleaned up. I just need some sleep, and I need to get away from the stress of everyone else that
Mm.
is ultimately really concerned for me because I'm not in a good state. I'm very compromised mentally, of
Yeah.
course, to be in this state of like in and out of groundedness and clarity. And I started having panic attacks. Like I couldn't walk to the mailbox, which was, I don't know, 50 meters from my house without, like, I'd panic
Yeah.
that I wouldn't have the energy to make it back to my house and stuff like that. And so I, came out of the hospital and then it got worse because I felt like I could still save this business.
Mm-hmm.
Yet the the landlord, she's like, look, why don't I'm gonna sell and that gets you out of the lease, like that
Yeah.
cleans things up on this end. I'm not in a position to run the business. I need a long break. I
Yeah.
basically need to go sleep for a
Yeah.
while
Yeah.
and rehabilitate my nervous system.
Hmm.
Yet I was still, pushing. And then my greatest fear in life was failing. And so I got to create that reality for myself. And so the studio closed on my 37th birthday, July 31st, 2012. And then I went into, once that space was gone, like that's when the depth really hooked into me.
Yeah.
And yeah, August 8th, I was like, I can't do this. Like just the voices in the head and all of it. I was like, I don't, this was the big dream and I messed it up
Yeah.
type thing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was all right. Well, I
Oh no. Uh-oh, did
walked in.
you froze on
Oh,
me? Sorry, I missed a little bit
oh,
there.
yeah, no problem. So, and of course, I'm not surprised. Like energetically, this is the moment. It's the moment of
Yeah.
me basically sitting at the counter in my condo. My husband's away guiding, and my parents had come to spend the summer in Canmore, divinely orchestrated.
Mhm.
And I'm basically lined up with a whole whatever painkillers and whatever I could get my hands on. And my mom walks up the stairs because she'd been trying to reach me and I wasn't responding.
Mm.
And it was that moment. And I remember our eyes locking. And I said, don't take me to the hospital.
Yeah.
I was like, I need you to trust me. I've not taken enough for there to be any damage done. And she just wrapped me in her arms, held me on the couch, and we cried. And I was like, I just felt shame, which is the lowest frequency, right?
Yeah.
And there's just this part of her that I saw come alive that I'd never witnessed in her before. And I felt this force of power from her and the force of love that she knew and she decided to trust that her love could help me stay. Ultimately, it would be my choice. But what she knew is what she could do is love me and see through what was physically
Yeah.
presenting itself and see through to the woman she knew was inside, just lost, confused, and in pain.
Wow.
And it was really powerful because, my father, my husband, very fearful.
Hmm.
And a lot of, it's like she needs treatment, she needs to go into a mental hospital. Like there was all of that. And my mother knew that that would take me out,
Yeah. Yeah.
which it would have.
Yeah.
And so I was grateful, that she was like just standing. She's like, nope, I'm advocating for who Kristen is. She's like yoga, spirituality. Like this is her medicine. This is who she is. She needs to be connected to this. And that's also what my medical doctor felt too,
Yeah.
which was incredible that I had, it's like all the angels show up
Yeah. Just when you need them.
right when we need them, and my medical doctor's like, well, you could go to an outpatient program in Calgary Hospital, or you could maybe go on a yoga retreat.
Yeah.
He said, what do you want to do? What do you feel would really serve you? So of course, the yoga retreat was the option. I was like, yeah, I'm going to do that. And also, speaking to the earth angels, the doctor that was on call for the Bow Valley Mental Health, when I checked myself into the hospital, this doctor, I'll never forget him. He was a psychologist in town, Dr. Law, and we spoke the same language of energy. And so he was a practitioner of Chinese medicine and the Tao, and he just knew the language to speak to me so that we could communicate and I could feel safe and not judged.
Yeah. And that's huge, not being judged in the process. Yeah.
Yeah, because then the psychiatrist that was assigned to my case was a very different story. I'm a 37-year-old suicidal female on her clipboard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so to circle this all the way around, I mean, it was a journey. I learned heart math that began the energetics of working with the heart and began my path of studying the heart and knowing, I didn't even like to take Tylenol if I had a headache. Like I was very much essential oils and natural and just that sort of thing. So it was very difficult to temporarily be on medication just to
Hmm.
help balance things out. I was
Yeah.
very resistant. And then I just took the lens of I'm only pulling the plant medicine properties out of these anti-anxiety, antidepressant drugs right now.
Hmm. Yep.
And then there was a point where again, a bit of the fire and probably the rebel side of me was
Yeah.
like, F it. I quit. And I just like quit everything cold turkey,
Mm.
knowing I'd go through some discomfort, but I could be witness to it and know what it was and not get pulled by it.
Yeah. Back to the power of presence, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, it was a journey of rehabilitating my adrenal glands and my organs. The practitioners I was seeing it was very holistic approach with obviously still the psychologist and my medical doctor.
Yeah.
An underground sisterhood of healers in my community reached out quietly, like, hey, we heard that you were having a hard time. Because I mean, Sacred Roots basically launched, was skyrocketing, and then crashed, and I disappeared. And I was like, okay.
And
Um,
camera is fairly small, so it's hard to
it's a
hide
small
those
community.
things.
It's a small community. And yeah, I mean, and for months I was receiving free treatments from all these incredible healers and practitioners from acupuncture and Reiki and cranial sacral, you name it. It was thousands upon thousands of dollars of gifts from a circle of women.
Amazing. I love it. I love when communities like that step up with zero expectation except for you to receive. That's
Yeah.
it. Just take the gift, honor the gift, and put it to use. And then one day you can pass it forward. And
And
that's
that was
so
it.
powerful.
And it was learning to receive. That was one of the lessons for me.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
I was difficult. It was difficult because it felt like I got this, right? Like that mentality of I can take care of myself. I got this. And receiving felt vulnerable.
Yeah.
And
Well, and
that's
you've
what I
been
need.
so independent for so long too.
And it's what, and we learned that as well, like that it was a bit of the lens that we learned, right? And so it was incredible. It took me until the following May to feel the energy again. I really actually went through obviously this is a challenging time, a lot of darkness navigated, even around like I hated yoga. I hated everything that had to do with spirituality and wellness. And it was like, forget it, all like it took me out. I had a lot of resentment, that was part of the steps of grieving and moving through everything. Um, and then eventually decided I wanted to teach again
Mhm.
and started, slowly teaching a little bit in Calgary, actually, which just felt better for me.
Yeah.
Um,
You just took a
and
different approach.
yeah.
Yeah.
And also when it was hard. Small community hospital. A lot
Yeah.
of my yoga students were the nurses in the hospital. And so there I am on suicide watch.
Yeah.
And that was really hard because I could hear their voices in the hallway. None of them were assigned to my room because that was, the hospital wouldn't do that.
No. Yeah.
Uh,
It's still
so
tough though.
it was hard. Yeah. So there was just that journeying, but ultimately it was bringing me home to the stage one of awakening, which is self-love.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
to recognize I'd never cultivated that internally, that I was operating from outside affirmation or validation. So overgiving, overdoing, overextending myself to, prove my worthiness
Yeah.
somehow because I had not embodied the knowing I was born worthy, nothing has changed. I'm more than enough. Yet
Mhm.
the different experiences in our lives, from being bullied heavily in school when I was younger to, just the trauma stories that were part of my story, to the experiences, and how it just winds our story until we start to unwind the story of who we thought should be or were supposed to be, to come home
Mhm.
to the truth of who we are on a soul level.
Yeah. Oof. That's heavy. So it has me asking as we move forward, and for example, I am a mother of a young girl. How do we help our younger generations hopefully not have to go through those processes or those types of changes to then at 40, 50, 60 reconnect with who they were? How do we just let them be connected without
Right.
creating that conditioning into their brain that they need to be seen as and do specific things?
I think I love this because I used to work with teenage girls a lot. That's actually, leading before yoga, and then during even that, I used to run teenage girl and mom and daughter programs and whatnot too, to just help dismantle a lot of what we have learned. Now, I don't have children I say in this lifetime is what I like to say. Auntie to many, goddaughters all over the place.
Yeah.
and very passionate about, like, we are clearing the wounding in the collective feminine consciousness through us, so
Mhm.
that what we are bringing through is the consciousness of embodied love. And, when you asked me the question in the beginning, what was that step, like onto the yoga mat, and how does that all connect? The path post 2012, 2013 was when I met the goddess. I met the divine feminine. And I realized that instead of doing, it was time to come home to being.
Okay.
And the being started with falling in love with myself for the first time in my life,
Yeah.
to start to face things that were still stored in my subconscious, and create a new way of living that was slower and softer
Yeah.
and embodied from this place of falling in love with myself. And I remember looking in the mirror, and I remember this moment of, oh my gosh, all I saw was beauty.
Yeah.
And it
But
was
in the
like,
form or in light?
both.
Okay.
And I knew, it's like, okay, this is it. As we work on the heart is the portal for all of this. And so wherever the heart has been pierced, we've got to remove the piercing, so to
Mm.
speak, to allow the light to flow. And I often give the image of, we are these beings
Yeah.
of infinite light, the light of 10,000 suns, in
Hmm.
our divinity, in the truth of who we are.
Hmm.
We came in as light. We're here to live as lit up as we can. We'll leave as light, and we continue. At least that's what resonates for me in my belief system.
Yeah.
And what we're here to remember, and what humanity is awakening to and remembering, like everything that's happening individually is happening as and for the collective too, right?
Yeah.
But our responsibility is to turn our light all the way up and on. And so any of the ways that we resisted, our light, we felt like we needed to be more, do more, anything that created wounding and story, and, you know, kept, it's like the light capped,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
right?
Put a
So
box around it instead.
yeah. So like, imagine we're these portals of light
Hmm.
that get to blast the light at a wattage that is beyond the light of 10,000 suns. But we've got a collective consciousness of humanity's history that has been a 26,000 year cycle, actually,
Yeah. Yeah.
of and patriarchal rule, and the distortion of power and money and all of the things that we're all reclaiming the truth now. But that heaviness and that
Mm.
density of humanity's consciousness when consciousness fell. So
Mm.
there's that we are also feeling, because this is the oneness. We feel it all.
Yeah.
And so we're here going, gosh, it feels so heavy to be here even. And I've said this, it's like, didn't it feel just so heavy at times to exist here in our human suit?
Mm.
Because light vibrates at such a high frequency.
Hmm.
But we vibrate at a low enough frequency to take human form,
Yeah.
flesh, blood, bones,
Yeah.
to be here.
Yeah.
Yet our souls remember existing as light.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so there's
And sorry, you always have you talk about this, and it always brings me back to the documentary of Down the Rabbit Hole, or What the Bleep Do We Know Down the Rabbit Hole. And like, for anyone who doesn't understand quantum physics, quantum mechanics, start there. If you can find it, start there, and you'll be like mind blown and more open to receiving this type of information.
yeah, exactly. And it's we exist, and we're basically becoming the energetic match
Hmm.
for what we desire, as we give ourselves permission to desire what we desire in life, and to open our light and to heal all the things that have held us almost like captive in these old looping cycles and
Hmm.
feedback loops of thought. And our thought creates our reality, and so our reality reflects back to us exactly what our thoughts are. So it's like, of course, my greatest fear was failure. Here, you're going to fail your yoga studio, your business. and all the things
Here you
that,
go on a
yeah,
platter, ready
here,
for you.
beautiful. And let's just get this over really quickly. Like
Yeah.
boom, boom, out. And now come
Well,
back. Everything you learn is going to be your medicine to share with the world,
yes.
which in 2019 and early 2020, I literally was receiving downloads from spirit, like messages saying, get ready because it's about to happen.
Wow. How
And
do
then
you
COVID.
receive them?
I hear them
Okay.
like voices. It's like the right voices in the head that I had to discern through.
Right.
I mean, the foundation, it's important to share. On the other side of 2012, I was always, I'd always been very good at moving, like physically active, very athletic, loved it, all of that. I wasn't good at sitting still.
Mm,
So the universe was like, let me 2x4 you. You can't move because you literally have no energy.
yeah.
So you're going to learn to sit. And I began a very devoted meditation practice that has never wavered since then.
Okay.
And it is through this practice in the stillness, in being the observer
Hmm.
of the mind and diving into studying consciousness and understanding the origin of thought. I'm actually literally teaching a program on this right now called Mind Mastery. So this is divine timing, of course,
Perfect.
but to understand that we are literally creating our lives through, it's like the garbage dump of the subconscious mind,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is the storehouse of all remembrance. But the storehouse of all remembrance is basically the regurgitation of the past.
Hmm.
And then we basically pull the past, live through this lens, and recreate it in the now, in the future,
Okay. Yeah.
until we disentangle
Yeah.
from the thoughts associated with a past experience, which gave us a feeling,
Hmm.
which is connected. And until we disentangle and disconnect, well, this must mean this is going to happen again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So until we disconnect from that, reprogram, create new codes. That's the language I use, like new codes. We're recoding ourselves like we do a computer.
Yeah.
It's like dump off the old programming,
Hmm.
create the new in the highest frequency as we become it.
Okay. It's like reframing a viewpoint or really just rewriting your story, if you will.
Absolutely. And that's it. And we're the artist at the canvas and the creator of our life. The pen is in our hand. And so what do we want to see? And
Yeah.
then we ask, and really checking in, like asking ourselves, what is the truth here? And as we, come into practices, somatics like yoga, meditation, where we're stilling the mind to remove the chatter,
Hmm.
like 80,000 thoughts go through the mind a day and 88% are the same.
Yeah.
So we got to, what are those same thoughts? And that really holds us accountable to, okay, am I creating something new or am I recreating the past in just a different form?
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
the grooves in the brain, they're called samskaras in yoga. It's like we spin our tires in the same track over and over again. And
Yeah.
then we try and get out, but we slide back in.
Yeah. Oh, I like
So
that. I like that analogy. Yeah.
yeah, because it gives you a visual. It's like, oh yeah, right. And it's like we got to step out of this track, create a new viewpoint, a new thought, a new belief,
Hmm.
because our reality, our life is the reflection of what we believe.
Hmm. So what
And
about those who are still operating in a little bit of fear of what stepping into that new reality will bring to them or will look like for them? How do they process through that stopgap, really, that's holding them back from getting out of that track?
the fear is the fear is connected to, I feel, the fear of how powerful we are.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny.
And
My
there's
question, my full question is, how can we work through the fear of our true power?
right. Because we subconsciously know how powerful we are.
Hmm.
What we also learned was to fear power, and that's where the distortion of power came in with the rise of the patriarchy after the fall of the ancient civilization of Atlantis. After Atlantis was when war began, domination, control, competition, scarcity, all the things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's when the disruption occurred. And humanity on a bigger scale is to give a visual, to give a connection point through history. We basically went from living in a golden age time frame of harmony and peace and love and overflow,
Mm-hmm.
from the golden into the silver, into the bronze, into the iron age, era of industrialization and all the things. This is the era we are exiting from now,
Mm-hmm.
as we are, I say, remembering the truth within us that goes way back
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
to the remembrance of we we know how to live in harmony and peace and what have you. What we see with our eyes is what brings up the fear,
Fair point. Yeah.
because we in our humanity, we tend to fear what we don't know.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
And
absolutely. And we
and
don't like not knowing.
we don't like not knowing. We fear the unknown. We trust when we have the evidence.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a grand invitation into ever higher levels of mastery and leadership, because we are leading a world that has never existed
Mm-hmm.
in this way and in this time.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'm going to bring in to also add to this, because it came up earlier, is, these we're in ever increasing higher frequencies right now on the planet. So the solar eclipse was a powerful gateway portal that brought through another level of consciousness. And so the aurora borealis that is blasted across all social media channels in my world right now,
Yeah.
from clients in Europe, clients in North America, to me, it was like, this is it. We're bathing in these high frequencies of light that are pouring in from these solar flares, CMEs, these solar storms, because they're bringing in higher consciousness. They're bringing in higher frequency, hitting the electromagnetic field of the earth and then of our human. And our human in this dense form has never known this level of light.
Mm-hmm.
So
No.
our bodies are integrating this light. It's like we just got plugged into 10,000 watts in an electrical surge.
Yeah.
And so it's like our human body is integrating this light, which also means purging the density and the shadow
Okay. Yeah.
in consciousness. So everyone is facing their shadow bits.
Mm-hmm.
It has to come out to clear it out, so that what we are thinking and vibrating into the quantum field, for example, is pure consciousness versus distorted consciousness.
Yeah. Yeah. So real consciousness rather than just awake or however you want to title it.
Yeah, or repeating. And so, but it all comes back to union,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because we're here to remember we are one humanity. And so long as there is separation, we keep repeating the past.
Okay.
And so
Wow.
if you've ever heard, people talk about the fifth dimension, 5D consciousness,
Yeah.
unity consciousness,
Yeah.
we're here to anchor that through us. And fifth dimensional consciousness is and when I say dimension, it means frequency.
Okay.
3D, third dimension, is a very dense frequency. It's the frequency we've been existing in as humanity, that holds war and it holds scarcity and all of the stuff that we are seeing. Fourth dimension is a higher octave of frequency, but within fourth dimension is where you'll see conspiracy theory, and you'll see a lot of, like, there's more consciousness, but it's still hooked into separation and fear. You
Okay.
enter fifth dimensional frequency, and it's the frequency of unconditional love, of union, and of infinite. There are no limits.
Okay.
Fear does not exist in fifth dimensional frequency. As a collective, each of us are coming home to remember that fear is the illusion and fear is what keeps us separate. So long as we are kept in fear, we are kept out of our power and we are kept in separation.
And you can witness that everywhere right now.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
here's the thing. When I said we're being called forth to a higher level of mastery and leadership, the most powerful leaders are the one who can see through the illusion, stand in the center of their power and in the truth that so long as I can literally vibrate and embody and see through the lens of unconditional love for all,
Mm-hmm.
this is what's going to change the planet.
Mm-hmm.
This
And
is what's shifting consciousness.
and stand there unwavering.
Unwavering, no matter what anyone has to say.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, COVID had to divide
Oh yeah.
us,
Grand
and
plan.
COVID, and it had to be so big it was global to wake humanity up. It
Mm-hmm.
had to hit the lungs, which are the storehouse of grief, so
Yeah.
that we could purge the grief of all of this distorted consciousness around war and fear and purge it out
Mm.
to come home to love.
I did not know the lungs were the storehouse of grief.
Yeah. And the kidneys are fear, and on the top of the kidneys are the adrenal glands.
Go crazy. Yeah.
So it's just so fascinating to pull back
Mm-hmm.
and then to look at, oh my gosh. Because I have people say to me often, because I, teach consciousness and
Yeah.
spiritual mentor, and then there's all the magic witchy stuff that either freaks people out or gets them really curious. And
Yeah.
people say, like, don't you ever just get frustrated with humanity? It's like, yeah, of course. Like there's days when I'm like, wake the fuck up. And I'm not talking about woke. I'm talking about wake up to your light, to your heart, to the love, and commit to that and be all into that because that is what is going to move the needle here for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's so difficult seeing all of the potential and possibility within the people, and they don't recognize it, they refuse to look at it, or they're terrified of really honoring and owning that. And it's like,
Well, and
but
that's
I see you.
yeah. And that's it. And this is so beautiful because as we know, you know, we exist as pure potential.
Yeah.
This is the quantum field, is the field of potentiality. All is possible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anything is possible. There are no limits. It's
Mm-hmm.
just energy looking for an energetic match.
Yeah.
And so there can be that frustration, right? And that's where we are called into our master, our emotional intelligence, our emotional mastery. It doesn't mean it's we speak and we share, but we share from what is our truth, but we've got to go in and make sure what we're speaking is actually of in like vibrationally our truth, and deeper truths will continue to be revealed.
Yeah.
And so the lens, the most important thing we can all be doing right now is looking through the lens of compassion
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because everyone is on their journey and their own timeline.
Yeah.
And nobody is better than, more enlightened than, more. So long as there's still that out there, we're still repeating the past. We are here to remember and just be the light. Can
Yeah.
I be the light for somebody today? How many ways can I do that? And I see you in your light. I hold you to your light and I hold you to your mastery,
Mm-hmm.
which can be triggering, activating.
Yeah.
You decide.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. Like, just working to see the person and recognize them where they are, but casting love on them regardless, because
Totally.
that's all we can do in the end. And I mean, I wouldn't want someone to hate on me. So why would we cast hate or disgust or shame onto someone else because of where they currently are in their life?
And multiple truths exist
Yeah.
because and you and I could have different truths.
Mhm.
And we're not here to convince anyone of anything. I think we have to focus on ourselves and to go in and do our inner work and keep going in
Mhm.
full faith, trust, and knowing without seeing the evidence yet that it is working on this heart space, working on this coming home to love and seeing the world through the lens of we can do this.
Yeah.
We can come into union and unite and bring in more peace and more harmony. So my accountability here to the world is how can I be more light, be more harmony, be more peace,
Mm-hmm.
and do my own inner cleanup of
Yeah.
anything that's been in the way of me fully embodying that to be the vibration of that frequency for the world.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then how do you pass that on so other people can grasp it and start emulating the same
Right.
aspect, same
And
practice?
and we pass it on by we be it and people feel it.
Yeah.
So, and that's where it comes back to we've got to be so committed to regulating our nervous systems because our nervous system knows fight, flight. Our primal programming
Yeah.
is run from the saber-toothed tiger, but the saber-toothed tiger is someone cutting you off in traffic now,
Yeah.
or over being overextended. Burnout is being out of alignment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It is. It really is. And that can someone would have told me that when I was in it, I probably wouldn't have received it so well. But when we start to understand energetics and quantum science,
Yeah.
you could see how this all plays out and the fact it is all a simulation.
Mm-hmm.
It's all
Mm-hmm.
a reflection.
Yeah.
And so it's like we're living in the greatest time in history. I am so grateful I said yes to this Earth mission, and I'm here for this. I got taken through the initiations again and again, and it's continuing.
Yeah.
There's not some final destination because there's actually an infinite destination.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Although there are days where it's like, why now?
Yeah. Well, and then you know what? I need a little time out. Time out.
Yeah. Like, can we just slow down for a moment?
I'm gonna go play in the mountains for a while. But the earth
Yeah.
is literally spinning at a faster rate than it ever has. So literally we are moving faster. We've got more light coming in, the speed
Oh,
of
yeah.
light.
Oh, yeah.
There is there's energetics, and I'll say this, it might not resonate with people listening, but just close your eyes and feel into your heart as I speak these words. But we are actually receiving codes to support planetary ascension and awakening through the sun, solar codes,
Mhm.
light codes. Different destinations around the world are also calling people. There's a reason people are flocking to Portugal, to Ireland, to Peru, to Egypt, to the temples, to sacred sites, sacred lands, because our soul is picking up remembrance as we remember those timelines.
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
And the secrets, it's like the caramel secrets, the codes are in those timelines from when the codes of like creation, the original truth, the
Mhm.
golden age existed then.
Yeah.
And it's been prophesied for thousands of years among all indigenous traditions and ancient cultures, the time we're in now. And we are here to pull through. It's like pull through the original codes,
Yeah.
unity, love, peace, prosperity, the infinite, pull them around the 26,000 or so years of dense consciousness, the Iron Age and whatnot, and bring these into the now, which is what's creating the future.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you envision the future?
I'm so excited for it. I'm so excited for it. And I see visions of what's coming through my gifts, my sacred gifts.
Yeah.
And everyone's sacred gifts are coming online. We all have these gifts of clairvoyance, clairsentience, clairaudience. We
Mhm.
learn to not trust them, to not trust that power because we remember being persecuted for it. I walk so many women through the witch hunts, like clean up that consciousness.
Yeah.
And so what I see that the more of us that bring our full light online and start creating a new paradigm here in leadership, in wealth, in business, in the union of the masculine and feminine, in the embodiment of our divine truth, our divinity,
Mm-hmm.
and leading from this space,
Mm-hmm.
we're leading and thus creating through this lens, which is what is creating a future that holds incredible peace and harmony. And I began the path of Andean shamanism many years ago when I first visited Peru in 2011, and then started running retreats myself starting in 2014. And on this path, the teachings are all around light and embodying light and the cosmos connected to the earth. We are the conduits between, and ultimately brought forth this body of work where what we are doing is supporting the evolution of humanity into its next state. And that next state is called Homo luminous.
Okay.
So we go from Homo sapien to Homo luminous, which is a being of light, a human of high frequency light, which would be anchored in fifth dimensional frequency, for to give a like a correlation to that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's where like poverty and war and scarcity and all of the human afflictions of the world that we have known and our ancestors have known for a long time is it's shifting. Like that has been a cycle and that era has ended.
Yeah.
But we're at the beginning
Mm.
of creating through us the new era, the next massive state of evolution as we anchor in fifth dimensional consciousness
Mm-hmm.
and more truths are being revealed, things that science had proven are being, disproven.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, what I do love is quantum science is essentially a beautiful way of explaining what spiritual paths and spiritual teachings have been sharing for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Not
Well,
religion, but spiritual teachings.
and my favorite thing is most spiritual teachings, it doesn't matter where it's coming from, they all come from to the same point where
Exactly.
love and being unified and connected is the most powerful place you can be.
Yeah. We're all coming in with the same end goal
Yeah.
ultimately.
Yeah.
So the details, don't get hung up on the details and the stories and this says that and this says this. It's like what feels like truth for you, but as long as you're anchoring in the vision for a united humanity. And
Mhm.
one of the visions that I kept seeing in 2020 in my meditations and my transmissions, and when I'm working with groups and clients and whatnot, was I literally saw the globe as this globe of pure light, and we were arm in arm. It was like hundreds of thousands encircling the globe, interlinking arms, walking, and every footstep activated more light. And we were just blazing light across the planet together as light workers, as light warriors, whatever language we want to use.
Yeah. Wow, that's a powerful vision. That's quite powerful. That's
Yeah.
amazing. So moving forward, how would you encourage any of our listeners who are just kind of at the beginning of this? How would you encourage them to start, advocating for themselves and starting to maybe learn more, find a right person to help them, yourself, or how to start working with some of that shadow work that, I mean, we all avoid. We know we need to do it, but where's a good place to try to start or get moving forward?
I mean, I always like to recommend start with like the body and the breath
Mm,
are tangible
mhm.
and they're moving energy and they're moving consciousness.
Yeah,
So breath work is a powerful practice for moving the shadow, moving trauma out. Yoga practice, I was intuitively called to it because it is a way of moving trauma out of the body,
yeah,
right? Because
yeah,
it gets stuck and stored and tightened, and that's when it manifests as injury eventually,
yeah.
whether it's physically or mentally. And so, get into your body, feel
Hmm.
safe in your body, fall in love with the power and the strength and the grace of your body,
Hmm.
nourish it, be in self-care.
Yeah.
Self-care is not selfish. Self-care is you honoring you. And the most important thing that we can do is recognize that we've got to put on our own oxygen mask first, take care
Hmm.
of ourselves, start to regulate the nervous system out of the sympathetic response and build the power of the parasympathetic nervous system response to be more dominant almost,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
right? So that we can feel regulation because that keeps us present, it keeps us in our body, and it starts to shift what's going on in the brain.
Mm-hmm.
I highly recommend a meditation practice because I've witnessed what it's done for me to go to the edge in psychosis, which is actually considered to be an initiation on indigenous spiritual path, like the spiritual path of the indigenous is
Interesting.
psychosis is the initiation to reprogram the brain and to bring through, managing multiple channels essentially.
Yeah.
And so I'm so grateful, like my meditation practice in a way saved my life.
Yeah.
My mother's love helped save my life. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where that power of the heart and the power of love is so key. And so, whatever brings you home to your heart would
Mm-hmm.
be my next invitation. Like, be in more joy.
Yeah.
We were not meant to toil away and work hard. And like, we're here to live in light and to live joyfully and play. Because when we are turning up that light from within,
Yeah.
our radiance and our joy and playfulness, we're turning up our light, which is attracting more experiences of that to us. Our heart is in its joy state, and when our heart's in our joy state, everyone who comes into our orbit can't help but feel the contagiousness of that energy,
Yeah.
and suddenly we have very happy people, and
Mm-hmm.
we're celebrating more, we're celebrating our wins, we're supporting one another, and we're just extending a hand and a heart and words of love to each other, but we've got to start doing that for ourselves first.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So that's where it begins, and be in community. And the first thing the shamans would say when you go see them is, when did you stop singing and dancing?
It's funny. I was just at a dance celebration this last weekend and no one really danced. It was a great band, live band, everything, and hardly anyone danced. And you mentioned joy. I was like, yeah, that's probably why no one danced because they actually don't know how to feel that freedom anymore because we've been just so slogging through everything. We haven't felt
Exactly.
joy. And dancing
Yeah.
is such an instant reminder.
I mean, what do we used to do? We used to dance around the fire, singing and drumming and being in ceremony. And, and this is the other thing, like, look at your life like daily ceremony
Mm,
and ritual. And if that language resonates, the shamanic path is a beautiful one and very connected to the elements and earth medicine and beauty. And, I invited my clients because I basically, my prescription I created for myself is what I would introduce to clients who are navigating some of the darker shadow work in
mhm.
their life. And, it starts with acknowledging three things of beauty around you,
Yeah.
whatever that is, be around puppies and babies and innocence and that that playfulness again. But there is beauty all around us. We don't see it because of where we are at when we're in those harder and darker places. Like, I remember hearing, it was approaching Christmas, and I remember hearing people laughing outside my window, and I was so angry at
Mm,
them.
yeah.
Right? I was jealous. I was like, screw you for being happy. I'm living in this, I was very in victim consciousness
Yeah.
because I was just in my wound and I wasn't there yet, right? And so it's like, how can we bring more joy and more light to the world and think about being a child again? And I feel like that's really important for adults. We get so serious about the healing path. We get so serious about, yeah, we've got responsibilities and bills to pay and all the things, yet what actually puts us in the frequency to do that with much more ease and happiness is by being in more play. So go
Yeah.
play.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Because we're
Oh,
hard enough on ourselves, right?
we're
Like,
so hard. Yes.
we're so hard on ourselves. We've got to stop doing that. And it's something we learned, and it's a paradigm we've been living in because hard was celebrated.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where, can we celebrate rest?
I do.
Like, how, and really, because I live outside of Canmore, athletes, Olympians. I mean, this is your
Yeah.
background, right?
Yeah.
And there were times when it was like, wow, if you didn't run up a mountain and do a yoga class and then go do something else epic, maybe go for like a 5-10 climb in a day, it was like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Right? Like there's a culture to that. And I remember listening to Elizabeth Gilbert speak a few years ago, and she said, the relaxed and nourished woman will change the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because we're open. And when we're open, we're not in fear as much. We're receiving. When we're in fear, we're contracted and we're creating from that state. And that state does not allow us to receive. It does not allow us to feel safe. And so we've got to create that safety and that trust. And that's where when we bring it back to spirituality and the divinity, it's like we're so supported. Look
Yeah.
at the miracles, look at the beauty all around us.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
And,
absolutely.
this tune into the sunrise, tune into the sunset as anchor points in your day.
Yeah.
Listen to the bird song because the frequency of that is doing something to your heart and your energy field. And so, the greatest place to be is in nature as much as possible.
Yeah.
High frequency. It's all
Yeah.
frequency. Frequency leads our business, it leads our lives. And so our commitment is to be as high frequency as possible. And that doesn't mean high vibe and false positivity. It's see the beauty. There's chaos going on. There's no sticking head in sand. We're here to create a whole new paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, let's get it from love and unity and joy,
Yeah.
because that's far more powerful and it brings it through at a much more accelerated rate, a quantum leap rate.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
that's what we're here for.
yeah. I love that. That's amazing. And I think that's a beautiful way for us to cap off this podcast episode. Kristen, I want to say thank you so much. I am so appreciative of just learning from you. I'm always learning because some of it is still very new. Some of the language and the words are, you're trying to wrap your head around them while you're listening. And yet it all resonates and it all, I can sense that it is the direction that we're headed. And now it's just, as for the listeners and for everyone else, is to figure out how to apply that. So that is a deep understanding for ourselves as we move forward as well.
Yeah. Thank you. And yeah, follow what feels good.
Yeah.
Does this bring me more peace, joy, and harmony in my life? Then
Mm-hmm.
it's a yes.
Yeah. Is this easy? Is it coming with ease, or am I having to force it to happen?
Exactly. And it's like, does this bring a sense of freedom? Because that's ultimately what we all desire.
Mm-hmm.
Freedom. Do I feel more freedom here, or did I overcommit? Or, it's just like it brings it back. And when we can tune into the feeling state, which we learned to not feel, to protect ourselves, to take this full circle as we close, it's like, what am I feeling right now? And what is the truth of this?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And can we expand those feelings of light, which is the joy and the love together?
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation and so much.